You would never think that 3 simple words could cause so much pain within the family. It was May 17th, 1993, when my son Christopher told us, "I am gay." Those 3 words changed our life forever. The timing could not have been any worse for my wife Angela and I. Our marriage was already a disaster after years of self-centered living as non-believers. I lacked in providing the relationship that my family required. Growing up in China, I had trouble leaving my parents and cleaving to my wife. And because of this, Angela felt betrayed. So we began the paperwork for a divorce. Christopher's declaration affirmed my belief that we should all go our own separate ways. Let him be, because there's nothing I can do about it. Besides, isn't it more important to be happy? But Angela responded quite differently.
On May 17, 1993, Christopher came home after his first year in University of Louisville School of Dentistry to tell us that he was gay. No word can describe how I felt at that moment. The pain I experienced was worse than if I had received news of his death. I thought that I could bring Christopher to his senses by threatening him with an ultimatum: choose the family or choose the gay lifestyle. To my surprise, he coldly got up and said, "If you can't accept me, I have no choice but to leave." Without any hesitation, Christopher picked up his bags and left. I fell to the floor in shock and anguish. My body was numb and as cold as ice. I was at the end of my rope as my whole world fell apart around me. On the outside, you see, it seemed as if I had it all: a new house, luxury cars, profitable investment, a husband with 2 daughters, and both dental school. But inside, I was depressed, lonely, and felt like I was a total failure. All I wanted in life was to have a loving family where I would belong. But that dream was now more distant than ever before. In my mind, not only had my husband betrayed me, but Christopher, who was closest to me, and my last ray of hope, had just betrayed me. I had no more reason to live. So I determined to do the unthinkable. I was going to end my life. The next day, I left home and bought a one-way Amtrak ticket to Louisville, where I would say goodbye to Christopher before ending it all. My husband, Liang, had no idea of what I intended to do. For some odd reason, I felt the urge to see a minister. I didn't even know one because I never went to church. I found the chaplain at my husband's dental school, and he gave me a pamphlet on homosexuality. With only my purse and that pamphlet, I boarded the train, believing that death was the only answer to all my trouble. Never been much a reader, I began to read the pamphlet, and it immediately captivated me. The pamphlet explained that we are all sinners, and yet God loves sinner but hates the sin. I had thought that I could no longer love my son Christopher because of his actions. But I realized that just as God loves me, I love my son in spite of the homosexual lifestyle. I looked out the window of the train and marveled at the beauty of nature. The fields extended in every direction and seemed to have no end. I had been an atheist all of my life, but for the very first time, I noticed the wonders of creation. I knew that there was a God. One of my favorite verses today is Romans 1:20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that man without excuse. I can't remember if anyone else was on the train with me, but it seemed as if I was there alone. I lost sense of time as I sat in perfect peace. Then I heard a still, small voice. You belong to me. God, who searches my heart and holds precious my very thoughts, knew my deepest need and told me that I longed to hear, that I belonged to someone, and that someone was God. Those 4 words from God were a healing balm to my shattered heart. On the back of that pamphlet, I caught a number and was connected to a Christian lady in Louisville who began to disciple me. For 6 weeks, I immersed myself into the Bible and felt as if I couldn't soak up enough. I had never heard of a Bible bookstore, so when I was brought to one, I was like a little kid in a candy store. Along with the Bible, I read Christian book after Christian book, from morning to night. I rented an extended stay apartment, and my time in Louisville was like a private retreat. I went to Louisville expecting to end my life, and in reality, I did. I realized the necessity of dying to myself daily. I needed to and must continue to lay aside my self-righteousness, my needs, my worries, and most of all, my family at the foot of Christ.
The cross.
The cross, the foot of cross. Galatians 2:20 states that, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me.
After 6 weeks, I got a call from the lady who was discipling Angela. She was so excited to tell me that Angela had surrendered her life to Christ. I was not pleased. I thought, great, this is my worst nightmare. Now she has got God on her side. But what I realized was that her transformation was not a Sunday-only change, but it affected every day of the week. She spent hours in her prayer closet each morning, reading her Bible and praying. Her faith was vibrant and alive. It impacted all aspects of her life. What Angela had was not religion, but an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. I was so impressed with the changes in my wife that within a few months, I decided to join her on the journey. We started going to church, and a friend invited us to Bible Study Fellowship, BSF, where we began to grow deeper in our understanding of and love for God and His Word. It was while studying the Bible that I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ. God became the glue which kept our marriage together as one flesh by drawing us closer to Himself. This was God's way of preparing us for the difficult years ahead as Christopher headed deeper and deeper into the world of homosexuality. 4 months before he was going to graduate with a doctorate degree, Angela and I found out that she was being expelled from dental school. We flew down to Louisville and made an appointment to talk with the dean. My son told us if we got a lawyer, we could fight this. Angela prayed hard and sought God for direction. When we came to the dean's office, Angela was confident in her response. Whatever the school planned to do, we would support them 100%. She also told the dean that it was not important that our son becomes a dentist, but it was more important that he becomes a Christ follower. We did not want to interfere with God's plan. The Bible teaches that true love is sometimes tough love. As expected, Christopher was infuriated. Within a few months, he moved further away from us down to Atlanta.
Christopher made it very clear that he continued to live in the homosexual lifestyle. I sent Christian cards several times a week. I filled them with encouraging words, scriptures, and hymns. At the bottom, I signed each card, "Love you forever, Mom." But little did I know that he never read them and simply tossed them into the garbage. I called him frequently, but I always got his voicemail. I would leave messages, but he never called me back. Once he even threatened me that if I brought up God, we would never see him again. I thought that Christopher might come home for the holidays if we bought him a plane ticket. On Christmas Eve, I went to O'Hare to pick him up. This was before 9/11, when we were able to wait at the gate. I stood there peering down the jet bridge and in anticipation for Christopher. As the arriving passenger came into view, my heart leapt with excitement, but then dropped in disappointment. It was not him. One by one, I watched travelers reunited into the arms of their loved ones, but as I stood there all alone. The last person came off, and I realized Christopher was not on that flight. So we drove home and came back several hours later for the next flight, only to repeat what had happened hours before. I knew that our son was not returning. In tears, I drove home.
Since Christopher won't come to us, we went to him. Angela and I flew to Atlanta, but on the second day, he kicked us out, not even let us call our friend to pick us up. I left Christopher with my first Bible. Not surprisingly, he refused, so I left it on his counter anyway and walked out the door. We found out later that he took the Bible and threw it in the trash. It was more than obvious that he was unreachable and totally hopeless. We knew that it was going to take a God-sized miracle to turn things around. So my wife decided to make a bold request that God would do whatever it takes to call this prodigal son home. As hopeless as things were, we committed not to focus on the hopelessness, but upon the promise of God. Along with over 100 prayer warriors, we cry out for Christopher. In addition, for 7 years, my wife Angela fasted every Monday, and once fast 39 days for our son. She would literally spend hours each morning reading her Bible and interceding for Christopher. Angela wrote out all her prayers, and this is one of those prayers. I'll standing in the gap for Christopher. I'll stand until the victory is won. Your Christopher heart changes. I'll stand in the gap every day, and there I will fervently pray. And Lord, just one favor, don't let me waver. If things get quite rough, which they may, I'll never give up on that son, nor will you. Though the enemy seeks to destroy, I'll not quit as I intercede. Though it may take years, I give you my fears and tears as I trust every moment I plead.
I prayed those prayers for years, and it seemed that God was not answering them in the way that I expected. His answer for me was, wait, be still, and know that I am God. As I look back upon those years when I prayed for change, God did bring change. The change was not yet in Christopher, but the change was in me and my husband. That God intended it for that time was that I would be changed, that I would be transformed, and that I would be a trophy of God's mercy. Oswald Chambers said, "We are not here to prove God answers prayer. We are here to be living monuments of God's grace." As we live out these years of waiting, we learn to walk and live as monuments of His grace, as God brought us to Himself each and every day. Thank you.